the weekly podcast where people reach their goals and develop confidence one mind shift habit at a time. Let's join our host, certified coach Christina.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach. I'm excited that you are here for this episode. I'm going to give you a hint of what we're going to be talking about. How many of you have ever said or heard someone say, I would do such and such, or I thought about doing this, and then all of a sudden thoughts came into your mind, do I have the knowledge? Who's going to watch? Who's going to pay attention? Who's going to listen to me? I need to get more credits on my books before I do this thing. Have you ever heard of the term imposter syndrome? Better yet, do you know someone who has imposter syndrome? How about if I gave you names like Viola Davis, First Lady Michelle Obama? Those individuals actually have imposter syndrome. I know, right? You wouldn't think that, would you? You wouldn't think a successful woman actress like Viola Davis, who's done tons of things, won plenty of Grammys and of awards, and just has done umpteen movies and TV series. You wouldn't think she had imposter syndrome. Certainly not the First Lady of the United States for 2 terms. There's no way that they could have imposter syndrome. Well, you're in for a treat today. My guest today is coming on to tell us all things imposter syndrome, but not just share and tell us what imposter syndrome is. No. You know I don't do it that way here. I'm going to make sure that we leave you after this episode with tools that you can use if you feel like you have it, or if you know someone who does. Please invite them, share this with them. So I'm going to give you time while I tell you a little bit about her for you to hit the share button, or for you to text someone and say, hey, you need to join Conversations with Coach tonight. My guest is unstoppable. She founded 2 multi-million-dollar agencies and has been among the top 50 entrepreneurs under 50 in Atlanta, and was twice awarded top 100 IT agencies by Experiential Marketer. She is a licensed metaphysical minister and a certified executive leadership coach, as well as having certifications in both neuroscience and positive psychology. One of my favorites. She is also an author. Her award-winning best-selling books, Own Your Own Shift, I said shift, and Inside Out Smart are available now on Amazon. I am so excited, thrilled, and honored that she is joining me. Go ahead and put some love in the chat and help me welcome our guest, Stacey Ruth. Hi, Stacey.
Hello. Oh my gosh. I feel like our energy is right in the same place. I can't wait for this conversation.
I am so excited to talk with you on this subject, because even though people have heard about imposter syndrome, they may have read a little bit about it, sometimes they become, what is the word I'm looking for? Information overload?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely.
There's a lot of misinformation.
Set it straight for us all. Once and for all. You're going to help us to define this thing called imposter syndrome, and you're going to provide us some tools to help us. So I'm loving having you on. And I just want to start things off with you just sharing a little bit more about your story. Now, I shared your wonderfulness already, a little bit of it. I didn't share it all. I want you to share more with the audience so that they will understand how you came into the arena of imposter syndrome.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And I love the examples that you shared with Michelle Obama and Viola, because Maya Angelou also
Yes,
had it, I mean, uh, and it's not just limited to women for sure, but my story is very similar to most individuals who deal with imposter syndrome. Looks great in the bio, right?
it does.
Multi-million dollar agencies, top 50 entrepreneurs. It's all fantastic, right?
Yes.
And and yeah,
And
and I'm paddling like hell under the surface, pardon my French,
right.
and as a woman, as a
Mhm.
high achieving woman, I'm more likely to have the experience of imposter syndrome, and that's exactly what happened to me. As
Oh,
I'm running these agencies at the time that I started, I'm going to kind of tell my age here, in the late 90s, the marketing and live event marketing field that I was in was almost completely male dominated.
right.
Now that was shifting, but I thought I had to lead like a man. I didn't think I would be respected as a woman CEO of a company like this. And
Mhm.
so already I was bumping up against that sense of I had to not do it, but I had to do 2, 3, 10 times as much as the guy next to me in
Absolutely.
order to make it work. And there's that feeling of I'm a pretender, I'm a fraud
Mm,
in this role. And so what I did was I was very perfectionistic. Imagine that. And I wasn't just perfectionistic for myself, I was perfectionistic for my team. I was
mm.
I I'll just be really honest, I was the micromanaging boss.
Got it.
I could never be fully satisfied or pleased,
Mhm.
and I procrastinated, and I tried to do all the things, and I didn't ask for help, et cetera, et cetera. Well, guess what happened?
Tell
One
me.
year, we lost a third of our staff and had to replace them.
Oh, wow.
And guess who's guess who gets to wear the responsibility for that
Yeah.
and how I was leading or not leading effectively. And
Oh, wow.
and ultimately, what really brought me to a place of something has to change
Mhm.
is I was just 40 years old and I found myself on the floor of the women's bathroom. I had been losing my hair. I'd been having
Mm.
headaches 24/7, and now I was bleeding internally. And that is
Yeah.
the physical impact that imposter syndrome creates in us
Mhm.
if we're not mindful, conscious, and aware of what's going on. And most importantly, that it doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. While you were talking and sharing your story,
Mhm.
I was getting very excited because I was like, we are going to help someone by the end of this. And that comes to mind
Mm.
because to your point, it's not imposter syndrome is no respecter of person, gender, socioeconomic
Mhm.
background, anything like that. It treats everyone equal. Which
It lays them low equal. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
yes, it
Yeah.
paralyzes us from being the success that we already are because it makes us think we're just not enough. And
Mhm.
I'm excited about that because you touched on so many things that I work with in terms of my clients
Right.
coming to me wanting to reach their goals.
Mhm.
But say, for instance, that little pesky thing called perfectionism is always in the way, and they feel
Mhm.
defeated and they feel like there's no hope for them. You gave us a really good overview of what imposter syndrome is.
Mhm.
I want to specifically talk about it. And also, is it contagious?
You bet it is. That it's interesting because a lot of the confusing information out there about imposter syndrome, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I have imposter syndrome," when what they're really dealing with is self-doubt. And self-doubt is normal and natural when we move from when we're learning something new. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
When we're in a new role or we're learning to ride a bike or we have our first child, all of these things are first time ever, and I'm going to have some self-doubt while I'm learning to do it.
Yes.
The thing about imposter syndrome is it has no doubt. Imposter syndrome says, I cannot do this. I have gone beyond my capabilities. I'm a
Yes.
fraud. I'm a pretender. And
Yes.
it disses any achievements. It deflects and rejects any achievements as being responsible for getting me to this level of success.
Absolutely.
I will turn away compliments. I will turn away. I will say,
Yes.
"Oh, I was just in the right place at the right time." It's not me. It's
Yes.
just I was just lucky. That's what imposter syndrome does to us.
Mhm.
It just
Abs
undermines our true value and worth. And here's the thing,
Mhm.
society teaches us
They do.
that we are not enough because we are, and here's the thing, it's not a respecter of race, gender, whatever, but and I guess I should say, and it is inherently present in first, only, different.
Wow.
So if I'm a woman in a man's industry, I am so much more likely to
Yes,
experience imposter syndrome.
that is
If
correct.
I'm an entrepreneur,
Yep.
I am so 84% of entrepreneurs, men, women, black, white, whatever,
Mhm.
admit to having imposter syndrome.
Mm.
You know, I could just go on and on and
Of
on, and I'm
course.
very active in women on boards, trying to
Mhm.
get 50% of women on the Russell 3000 boards.
Mhm.
And because it creates a dynamic of better, more accurate, sustainable, resilient decisions within organizations. Great.
Mhm. Mhm.
Except when the first members come on, they are experiencing imposter syndrome until that balance is achieved. And that's where imposter syndrome lives.
Absolutely. I appreciate you giving those differences,
Mhm,
speaking about having self-doubt
mhm,
versus imposter syndrome. They're very clearly distinct things. And it's
mhm.
even sometimes when you know that it's self-doubt that the imposter syndrome will tell you that
Yes.
it's not. It's that you can't, you are not able. And like you're saying, it's
Mhm.
the language
Yeah.
that comes along with the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, and it's paralyzing because you have this, it's like you're at war with two selves. You have this desire to
Mhm.
serve, to help, to improve, and then this other side of you is constantly saying no, you can't, you're not worthy, no one's going to listen to you. And you have all of that going on in your mind. So you've got the left brain and the right brain just clashing with one another all the time.
Yes.
And you shared very candidly while you were working for one of the companies that there was a huge loss in the people that help you, the employees.
Yes. Yes.
So that leads to this question: how is it so contagious?
Well, it's contagious within society, and leaders have a supreme responsibility. I believe, as a leadership and executive coach, I'm very adamant about this. Leaders have a responsibility to inoculate themselves. We'll use the disease language to inoculate themselves from imposter syndrome because as a leader, we model the behaviors that tell others you
Yes,
can't do it or you can do it. I
yes.
believe in myself. I believe in you. I
Mhm.
don't believe in myself. I don't believe in you.
Exactly.
And so it's very contagious within organizations and, even within academia because I got a degree in mathematics,
Mhm.
um, from a scientific school, and one of the professors, was, from Poland, which is kind of a patriarchal,
Mhm.
culture even still,
Mhm.
but, there were 2 of us in the graduate program that were female.
Mm.
Everybody else was male, and he informed us that women did not belong in the math department. Now, I didn't intellectually absorb that. In fact, I got kind of irate about it. And at some level, I did absorb it.
Oh.
And that's where it gets really tricky because then when I'm in this, arena, my chosen career field that was
Mhm.
male dominated, that message was still there.
Of course.
right? So that's kind of how the contagion can happen. It's not just that people are doing it unintentionally or unconsciously. Some people are doing it consciously,
Right.
and it really can be contagious, even when you don't think that you're susceptible.
Absolutely. And mentioning that some people are doing it unaware, unintentional, and then there are
Absolutely.
others who are doing it very much aware and very much intentional.
Hmm.
What would be one reason as to why someone would be intentionally sabotaging, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
someone else's success and confidence?
Well, I think we're dealing with cultural biases. And some of the biases that we experience in the work world aren't necessarily cultural. They aren't necessarily gender based. They aren't necessarily race based. They can be like status quo based, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think that that those who are consciously communicating these messages are not doing it in order to do harm, but they're
Mm.
doing it in order to maintain their status quo.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And there is underneath that there's fear,
Yes.
right? You know,
Yes.
and not necessarily fear of the other person, but fear
Mhm.
of losing position, losing power, losing freedom, losing something, right?
Mhm.
Now that's my opinion, and it's based on a lot of the the psychology that I see around.
Mhm.
And I don't think anybody's trying to undo someone, but at the same time, they ain't helping.
They're not helping it
They're
at
not helping,
one
right?
bit, not one bit.
Right.
And to your point, the fear that comes in,
Mhm.
and as we know and as we have experienced, fear is derived from lack of knowledge. And people fear what they can't understand and what is different. And that,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah,
And
and study after study has shown if you put, individuals from different, socioeconomic, cultural,
Mhm.
gender, race, whatever, if you put them together
Mhm.
and they must work side by side together, the fear of the differences fall away. But
Absolutely.
they're not necessarily gonna create that themselves.
That is
Sometimes it has
absolutely.
to be culturally mandated or legally mandated, and that's a whole different conversation. And when that happens, the interaction that's initially bumping up against our differences is where the messages of imposter syndrome can show up.
Absolutely. This is very good information. And I hope those of you that are
Mhm.
watching, even if you're watching it on replay, I hope that you are getting some really good nuggets from this. This subject that we are talking about, imposter syndrome, we could probably do a whole season worth of talk. We could do 10 plus episodes and
We
still
could.
be only scratching the surface of it. But what I enjoy about having this conversation is that we are helping someone, because someone may not have known, hey, that's what you call this.
Yeah.
And so now that you've done such an excellent job of sharing with us what it is and how it is contagious, now I know for myself as well as for my listeners, what are the practical tools? What is it that we can do to disarm it so that it is not,
Mm.
and also can we get rid of it completely, or is it just we can only disarm it?
Well, I'm going to have to say I'm not entirely sure whether we can get rid of it. I know that this is just like some sort of funhouse mirrors experience, but I was putting together a module for another coach about imposter syndrome, and she was
Mhm.
giving me some candid feedback on what she wanted,
Mhm.
and adjusting. And it was so ironic that while I was putting together the imposter syndrome content, that someone was giving me feedback and it was bringing up my imposter syndrome. So
Mhm.
at least I was conscious of it.
There
And
you go.
that I think is the real shift that happens is that we go, oh, that's my imposter syndrome, that I don't have to go down that rabbit hole anymore.
Mhm.
And that's where I think it really shifts is the self-awareness.
Mhm.
And that's why I love that you're doing this. The big thing that I just don't want to skip over, if someone recognizes that they're exhibiting the symptoms of
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, which
Mhm.
include perfectionism, I mentioned,
Yeah.
procrastination,
Yes.
trying to be Wonder Woman or Superman and do all the things and not ask for help, feeling like you need to do it alone so that someone doesn't catch on that you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
Right? The soloist is that personality,
Yes.
so, or that you just have to get one more certification, one more credential, and you read my credentials
Hmm.
and guilty as charged, right?
Yes.
Those are some of the signs, and then you go, oh my gosh, maybe I have imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
I want to anchor this idea for everybody who's listening.
Okay.
It's not your fault. I really want people to let go of the next thing that happens is the self-blame, judgment, and criticism.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the reason I say it's not your fault is because the messages are external. And the reason we develop imposter syndrome is because we're taking on external messages from society, from culture at large,
Mm-hmm.
which I hopefully described pretty clearly in my experience.
Yes.
The solution is going within.
Mm.
So it's externally created, and then we take it on.
Mm-hmm.
And the solution is to turn that wrong side out and to bring forward our own inner wisdom, which I call intuition. And I don't use intuition in the sense of necessarily psychic phenomena, although that's a part of it. But
Mhm.
I use it in the sense of that knowing without knowing how we know.
Mhm.
That I do have this wealth of knowledge and resources in my entire brain, conscious, unconscious, left brain, right brain, EQ, IQ, all of that working together creates my intuition, which is in my entire brain. And when I can tap into that, and I know what I want, and I know what my values are, and I know about my strengths, and I know about my skills and my talents and my passions and my desires and where I'm headed and my goals and my objectives, I'm no imposter.
No, you're not.
I belong here,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And there are tools for strengthening and actually building the neural pathways, the synapses, and the neurons that create a stronger connection between our conscious mind
Yes.
and our unconscious mind, which is 95% of our brain.
Mhm.
And therefore, the majority of our intuition resides there. So that we can bring forward the guidance that our intuition is always giving us and recognize it, tap it on demand, and put it into action. I mean, that is like the most powerful inoculation against imposter syndrome that there is.
That is all so good. This information is just rich
Mhm.
and it's practical. It
Great.
is comforting because if you are a person who has been struggling with that self-sabotaging way of thinking,
Mhm.
you should feel relieved right now, knowing that number one, it is not your fault, and that you do have the power to disarm it. How about for you? You discovered, hey, I've got this thing called imposter syndrome. It is wreaking havoc for me
Mhm.
professionally, not to mention personally, what I can only imagine, with all the
Mhm.
physical things that you explained and shared with that you were going through.
Mhm.
What got you on the road of disarming it?
Well, it was a couple of things. One is I actually read Arianna Huffington's story, which as a Greek entrepreneur, she was prime for experiencing imposter syndrome, and it was almost identical to mine as far as the health concerns.
Mm,
And so I realized I wasn't alone, and I realized I didn't have to stay that way. At the same time, I was also starting to do a lot of the spiritual work in my ministerial studies, and a big part of that is leveraging our intuition. And so at the same time that I was trying to kind of fill the well with the spiritual and was starting to realize the powerful tools of intuition, I
mhm.
realized how they were all internal and how all of this dynamic that was going on in my work was external. And so it was a bit of an aha moment for me.
Ah,
That happened a little bit over time. And what I found was once I got really clear about who I was and what I was about, and what was really pulling me that's when I was able to make a big shift. And so even if imposter syndrome pops up, there's greater self-awareness that
Yeah.
comes from connecting to our inner core wisdom.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. That is all good. I hope everybody's taking notes. I hope you are, again, hit this rewind button if you're watching this on replay and just
Mhm.
sit in what Stacey is sharing here. When we learn, when we know more, we do better, or when we, so our habits do shift.
Yes.
And working with your clients who this is prevalent, they have not been able to disarm it because,
Mhm.
hey, they just found out, or they've been on the road, like you said, it wasn't an overnight switch.
Right.
And so they've been on this road of realization, intuition. They keep falling back though into those habits, and they're just ready to just throw their arms up and say, you know what, this is just who I am. There's no
Mm.
hope for me. How would you share with them ways that they can learn how to activate, recognize, and use their intuition on command?
Absolutely. No, there's some very powerful tools. And I don't know if you can add this in the show notes or, how we could share this, but I do have an intuition workbook on my website. So I think you're putting the website in there,
Mhm.
Unstoppable Dash Leader, and there's a tools tab and it's in there. And one of the things that we start with are finding the tools that really speak to whoever the client is, because you can use any all layer, use them individually.
Mhm.
But what we're really doing is building the connection between our conscious and unconscious mind. And one of
Mhm.
the first ones that I bring forward, and you'll be surprised how many people are like, I can't do that, is
Oof.
meditation and
Yeah.
mindfulness practice.
Mhm.
And that's a powerful way to still the mind and bring forward some of that intuitive inner guidance, just by simply saying it's okay to not self-identify with your thoughts. That's really all there is to it. And
Mhm.
to be present in our physical body. That's another tool, is really listening to, which I was doing a horrible job of when I was running my first agency, of really listening to the signs from our body of what we really need and what's really healthy for us. I mean, we try to just push past and feel like our body's betraying us, and in fact, we're betraying our body. So let's listen to our body.
Mhm.
And another is journaling our dreams. I'm surprised how many people say, I don't dream. We all do.
Mhm.
And when I started writing my first dream journal, within about 3 months, I could remember over 30 dreams a night.
Wow.
And if I had written them all down, I would have been writing all day and not done anything else.
Mm.
What happens then is we start to do things like lucid dreaming, where we're dreaming, but we're aware that we're dreaming consciously. I mean, that's the connection between the conscious and unconscious mind that's
Mhm.
possible.
Mhm.
And we can impact and affect our dreams. And
Right.
I could go on for days about that. That's a very, very powerful tool. Um, and another one is to practice rituals. Almost every religious faith has rituals attached to it.
Mhm.
But, our morning shower, our
Brushing
first
your
cup of
teeth.
coffee or tea, that's a
Yeah.
ritual as well. And what
Mhm.
they do is they really ground us in the present moment. So we're
Mm.
not worrying about, what somebody's going to think or
Mhm.
what we're going to do in the day. We're just present in the ritual of the moment. Those are just some
Mm.
examples. Oh, I got to mention this one. Do I have a minute?
Okay. I keep going.
Okay. So, a lot of folks are aware of free writing or some people call it conscious musing, but where you simply start writing and you're not judging what you're writing.
Uh-huh.
And it's really powerful to feed that journaling a question before you start. And then you just start writing. And what actually happens is you kind of get in almost a hypnotic state when you
Mhm.
do that. And your unconscious mind will start delivering you pearls of wisdom in doing that if you do it for 5, 10 minutes.
Mhm.
And some of the questions are, what do I want?
Ah,
Um, how does this align with my values? Of course, you got to know what your values are.
true.
Um, what direction am I headed?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How am I owning whatever the decision of the day is? How am I owning this decision? In other
Mm-hmm.
words, what kind of action am I going to take? Right? Setting intentions, all of these kinds of things are allowing whatever's inside of us to come up and be seen and known. We're inviting our
Mm-hmm.
intuition forward in ways that we tend to just kind of race by and not pay
Yeah.
attention, like a stranger on the street.
Yeah. I recently had a conversation with someone and we were talking about mindfulness and getting ourselves anchored into the moment. And because of the way that we are and the way that society is,
Mm-hmm.
we are always on the go. Always, mind is always racing. Even when we're trying to shut it down at night, for some of us, we can't even get that done
Right.
because it's just so much up there. I like the fact that you talked about journaling because I do journal and it is a way to dump. And
Mm-hmm.
it is a way to get it out there. And I have found personally that when I do that, I am able to relax more. I think
Yes.
that the time of the day or whenever something's going on. So talking about that specific type of journaling is very freeing because if you've got a big presentation coming up, or if you've got, and now, like you said, you're starting to go down this rabbit hole, that is a very good way to, on command, just whether you open up the notepad on your phone and you just start just getting it out, it actually will lower your heart rate,
Yeah.
your blood pressure, you will become more relaxed and being able to do the thing, whether it's give a presentation, whether it is studying, whether it is going to sleep. Your mind
Mm-hmm.
then becomes very singularly focused because you are present in the moment of getting it all out, focusing on your breathing, how you're feeling. And it's not encouraged enough in our
Right.
society for everyone, men, women, children, to get in touch with their feelings. It's like, oh, we got things to do. We can't slow down for that kind of nonsense. And it's like, if you don't slow down for this kind of nonsense, the repercussions of that is going to, you don't want to know. And you have named your company Unstoppable. And it's the unstoppable leader. How did you come up with that name?
I love it. Well, I truly believe that whatever it is that is inspiring us as leaders, and I make a distinction that some leadership pundits don't. So that there is also self leadership, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to lead." Well, you kind of can't avoid it, so you might as well do it well.
Right.
But the idea of being unstoppable to me is to really know what our vision and our direction and our passion is, and to really lean into that. And I liken it to water
Mm.
because water is going to go in the direction that it's headed, and there will be obstacles, but
Mhm.
water will go over, around, or through the obstacles and return back, not deviate, but return back to its original course.
Mhm.
It's very resilient. And
Very.
so to me, unstoppable is truly a practice in resilience, very powerful for entrepreneurs, also very powerful, especially for executive leadership today in the dynamic that we're all dealing with.
Yes. I love that water analogy that you
Mm.
made. It as soon as I heard you talking about it while you were talking, I immediately thought of the Grand Canyon and
Oh,
how that
yes.
massive landmark was
Mhm.
carved out of water, not stopping, not letting anything stop it from
Yeah.
creating great, from not let anything stop it from getting to where it needed to go. And in the midst of being unstoppable, it created this grand
Mhm.
this grand canyon. It created this grand piece that we all get to enjoy. And so just making it very simplistic to us, your listeners, to recognize that we have that same unstoppable power in us. We want to make sure that we're tapping into it and that we're silencing all of the inner critics, all of the imposter
Mhm.
syndrome. We want to make sure that we are doing that so that we can walk in our unstoppableness. And I know that's a mouthful to say. It's a lot of work to say.
Absolutely.
Stacey,
Absolutely, and I do wanna add that part of the unstoppability, that is part of the intuitive abilities, is a flexibility.
oh yeah.
There's a gentle quality to it that is very directive, and it is
Mhm.
not about powering through.
Right, exactly. The Green Canyon itself was not formed overnight. It was formed over time. And
Yes.
that in and of itself, to be unstoppable, is not something that you have to put that expectation of doing it overnight, in a week, in a month, in a year. The whole thing is to keep moving like the water, and your greatness will shine for others to see.
Absolutely. Oh,
Stacey,
I love that.
I have enjoyed this, and we can go on and on, but we're not going to have to go on and on because I'm going to go ahead and ask you right now, will you come back and we maybe pick one or two specific things and do a deeper dive?
That sounds like an absolute delightful opportunity. Let's do it.
I appreciate that because I know that this is a subject matter that I read about a lot. I hear about a
Mhm.
lot on social media in the circles that I travel and the clients that I actually help. And it's true. It is something that's real. It is something that people are struggling with. And I am so thankful and grateful that you are in this space to
Thank you.
actually give them the tools and the resources that they need. Stacey did mention about her website. And you know how I do it. I put all of that in the show notes. My call to action is to ask you to follow Stacey. She is on LinkedIn. She is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Engage with her, ask her questions, and go to her website. Talk about she talked about the tools. She's got a tools tab. Sometimes though, we can have all of the right tools, but we might be using a hammer when we should be using a screwdriver. So it is very important that when you use those tools, you want to select the one that's going to be effective for you. And the only way that you're going to know for sure is for you to make a connection with Stacey so that you aren't doing it alone. You aren't feeling through the dark. And if you're like me, you probably got more utensils and tools that you need, but it was because through trial and error I didn't realize after I had purchased one thing that I truly needed another.
Mm.
And fortunately, we've got the resource in Stacey that we don't have to go this disarming imposter syndrome in the dark. Now, Stacey, before I let you get away, I mentioned in the beginning that you are a best-selling author and an
Mhm.
award-winning author. And I would be remiss if I did not ask you to talk to us. I really like your title, Own Your Own Shift. That's
Uh-huh.
really cute. I really want you to share with us before you get out, if you don't mind. Tell us more about your most recent book, Inside Out Smart.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. No, I love all my books, and they do function together. And the first book that about this Own Your Own Shift has a chapter on intuition, and people were so smitten with it that I don't get to use that word a lot, smitten,
I know.
but this Inside Out Smart is really doing a deeper dive into how we make decisions using our emotions primarily, and we're not even aware of it,
Mhm.
as well as how to, and it goes into great depth in some of what we talked about here about how to tap into, recognize, and
Mhm.
really use our intuition in order to make faster and more accurate decisions. Our intuition is the most accurate decision tool that we have, believe it or not.
Wow. I know that there are many, many book clubs out there. Would you, if someone has a book club and they're like, you know what, this would be a really good book for us to discuss in our book club. Have
Mhm.
you ever been a special, a featured guest at a book club discussing it?
Yeah, yeah, I have. And I mean, a lot of book clubs just read fiction, but the business book clubs, absolutely. Absolutely, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. These are issues that a lot of which are specifically addressing women's needs and women's challenges.
Mhm.
However, they are broader as well.
That's good to know. So I'm inviting everyone that's watching, everyone that's currently listening. And if you are in a situation where, say, at your company supports training and development, you need to get in touch with Stacey, not today, but yesterday, because having her in your arsenal of feeding into your leaders is paramount, because in this what they call great resignation time, it is really important that your leaders are feeling empowered, they are feeling unstoppable, and she would love to come in and do a training with your leaders. So again, her contact information is going to be in the show notes, and she's already agreed to come back, and we're going to pick some different subject topics to talk about. And if you want to put something in, some suggestions in the show notes, or if you want to email her something that you yourself want to know more about, please do that, because that will help to guide the conversation the next time that she's on here. Stacey, I can't thank you enough. The time was much, much, much too short. I don't even know if we would have had 2 hours, if it still would have been enough, because this is so helpful for everyone. And I just appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing with my audience.
Oh, an absolute joy. I can't wait for next time.
Me either. I'm going to say goodbye to my audience, and I'll be right with you. And there you have it. This episode, I told you in the beginning that this episode was going to be packed with information, and not just information. We left you some tools. If you truly know of someone who has battled imposter syndrome to the point that they are exhausted, maybe they're even like Stacey and they were showing some physical signs of the imposter syndrome. Well, now you can add this resource into your arsenal for knowing that, number one, there's nothing wrong with you. It is not your fault. And you have a way to disarm it, and activate your intuition, and so that it operates on command. It is going to take work, but it is going to be well worth it. Well, you know what I'm going to do next. I'm going to share with you how you can follow me on all of my social media. Well, I guess you're already doing that. But if you just happen chanced up on this episode and you aren't one of my followers, do that today. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. All of it is at Christina Mindset Coach. And maybe you're like, my confidence is a little rough. I really want to work on my confidence. And that's going to start with your mindset shift. Well, I'm the mindset and confidence coach, and I can help you with that. Visit my website and schedule your free clarity call today. I am so grateful and thankful again for you joining me. And I will see you here, same time, same place. But until then, make it the best one that you can. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Coach. Please be sure to follow Coach Christina on all of her social media platforms. And remember, life is only as good as your mindset.